Perfect. All right, so we are
gonna put you
recording.
both
We're
on.
not live. Welcome in Allison too. We got a whole bunch of teachers joining us, a few students. Thanks so much for being here. So as I've said to all of you, unfortunately, we're not able to take this live to YouTube right now. Zoom is very disagreeable today, unfortunately. But we are going to go live to Ripley's Aquarium. We're going to record this, and you guys can share this with all your students afterwards on YouTube. Really appreciate you being here from across Canada and the US. So we've been doing programs with Ripley's Aquarium, tons of them over the last couple of months, with sharks to turtles, seahorses, all sorts of amazing creatures in one of the most amazing facilities in Canada, if not the world, in the heart of downtown Toronto. They might be closed, but they're still doing great education and animal care work. And today we are doing something very special. We are joined live by Caitlin Tubby, so she's an education lead there, and she's going to walk us through with the Aquarius team a piranha feed. So I'm really excited about this, to see piranhas eat something. I hope you guys are too. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Caitlin to see what's going on. Caitlin, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, Jesse. Hi, everyone. We are in front of our piranha tank, as Jesse said. So we're in the gallery part of the aquarium. It's about the halfway point, sort of just after the halfway point. And we are joined, I'm going to turn around, by our fan club. So we have Anthony, our aquarist. He's going to be dropping in some food for the piranhas. And then we've also got a member of our maintenance staff who just wanted to come and see the feed, and I don't blame you. So Anthony, you want to just go toss some food in? All right, so back to our piranhas. They're feeding a couple different things today. So the main thing they're going to be feeding is mackerel. So it's probably going to look like a really large fillet of fish that's going to go into the water. And Anthony's also going to toss in a few pieces of capelin, so that's a much smaller fish, just to kind of get them a little riled up. Without further ado, hopefully. They do tend to eat pretty quickly. Oh, there goes the capelin. So they do exhibit that swarming behavior that people know them for. But while they're feeding, I'm just going to give you a bit of information about the piranhas. So this is a freshwater tank. These are freshwater species that you'd find in the Amazon River Basin area. Oh, here we go. Here is the food going down. All right. Let's see if they're interested. Hopefully, I can't see through the mass of them right now. So yeah, you find them in the Amazon River Basin. They have a lifespan of about 10 years. Here we go. And I want you to notice that despite all of the chaos that you see while you're watching them eat, there is kind of an order to how these fish feed. There are more dominant ones in here, and then they usually go for the food first. Usually each piranha will take a bite out of it and then retreat and let the next one come in and also have a bite. So it's almost like a lineup system that they have going. They've ripped a couple of the pieces of mackerel right off. So I'm going to go down here. So you can see, yeah, each piranha will come in, we'll usually grab a bite and then just leave it for the next one to come in. I forgot about that piece of food now. And that is all the piranha food gone. So it's all scattered around the tank now. They can feed very, very quickly, as you notice. Oh, Anthony tossed in some more capelin for us. Piranhas usually, this is kind of their max size. So they only weigh about 4 pounds and they're usually just around a foot in length. So not very, very big. They're very rotund though. There's about 30 to 60 species of piranha in the world. That number is, I know it's a large variation there. It is a heavily contested number because scientists still aren't sure how to classify many of the species of piranha and which families they go into. So that's why there's such a large variation in that number that I just gave you. Let's see if they're gonna come after this. Now, if you notice their jaws, they're hidden very well. They're kind of in the back of their mouth more so. So they've got those large, almost lips in front of them that cover their teeth very well, but they do have interlocking teeth that are razor sharp. So they're very sharp. And in fact, piranhas have one of the strongest bite forces of any bony fish. So pound for pound, they actually have a bite force that is stronger than a great white shark. So they have super chompers there. We can classify it as 320 newtons for those of you who know what that measure is.
We do a lot of research up in the Arctic. And you can see Haley here.
It is the strongest bite force of any bony fish. And then similar to sharks, these guys are able to regrow their teeth. So if you've seen any of our shark content, you know that sharks will replace a tooth right after they lose it. Piranhas can do something similar. However, they regrow quadrants of teeth. So if you think about your own mouth, if you divide it into 4, that's how piranhas will regrow their teeth. So they'll regrow it.
Setting up some measurements.
A quadrant at
1 second, eh? Sorry, we're just trying to, there we go. We're just trying to get us live. We've got Joe in on the broadcast too, so we just need to mute and we'll keep going, okay?
Yeah, no worries. Just tell me when you want me to restart.
No, you're all good.
We also take measurements from aircraft. You can see your research aircraft here.
And we'll be good. There we go. Perfect. Okay, you're good to go, Caitlin. Take us away.
Okay.
Again.
So did you get all that information? I can repeat it.
Just the last like 20 seconds we missed, that's all.
Okay, so they have one of the strongest bite forces of any bony fish. And similar to sharks, they can regrow their teeth. So if you've seen any content with us regarding sharks, you know that sharks are constantly losing their teeth and then it gets replaced by the next tooth behind it. Piranhas are similar, except they regrow quadrants at a time. So if you think of your own mouth and you divide it into 4 separate areas, that's how a piranha's mouth works. So they regrow like a quarter of their teeth all at once after they've lost one. Trying to follow this piece of mackerel around. There we go. So these are freshwater species that are found in the low elevation areas of the Amazon River Basin. So this is a warmer water tank. It's about 20-ish degrees, somewhere around there. And in fact, all of the species of piranha are found in and around that area. That's their native areas, those Amazon River basins. Now, despite what you're seeing, piranhas are omnivores, so they're not strictly carnivores. Most of their diet consists of fins that they will bite off of other fish. However, they'll also eat insects and smaller aquatic invertebrates, and they're known to scavenge on any dead animals that would be in their habitat, so other fish mainly, things like that. Some are also more vegetarian. I bet a lot of people didn't know that. Some piranhas will feed on seeds and leaves in their native habitat. And they generally will consume about 1/8 of their body mass in a day. So usually about 2 to 3 grams. So it's actually not a ton of food. They're known for that sort of swarming behavior, and they're known to exhibit that. And it kind of gives them a bad reputation, but they actually don't eat a ton. And they tend to more scavenge versus going for large live prey. In terms of predators, these guys will get fed on by herons and caimans, which is kind of like a small alligator that is known to be in the Amazon area. But sometimes they'll also, unfortunately, perish if the floodplains in the Amazon where they live dry up. So they get trapped in these little, almost tide pools. And then if it dries up, oxygen levels become really low and they can perish from hypoxia. So that's just basically suffocating in their habitat. Now, we do have a hierarchy in this tank. Piranhas do better when there's lots of them in an exhibit. And there will always become more dominant ones who tend to inhabit the top areas of the tank, and then the more subordinate ones will inhabit the bottom of the tank. So they kind of get picked on a little bit, and then they just force them, the dominant ones will force the subordinate ones to the bottom of the tank. And then you may have noticed that in all the chaos of the eating, the ones at the top of the tank will tend to go for the food first as well. So those dominant ones are the ones who go in, inspect the food, and then have the first few bites, and then allow the more subordinate ones to come in after them. So they tend to exhibit shoaling behavior, usually in groups of about 20 or more. And in aquariums, it's also important to keep lots of them in a tank because we don't want them to become too aggressive. And when you have fewer fish in a tank, they tend to exhibit more aggression towards their tank mates. So that's why we have a lot of them in here. Let me see. In terms of reproduction, piranhas do exhibit some parental care. Males will basically dig little bowl shapes in the sediment at the bottom of their habitat, and then try and entice a female to lay her eggs in that little bowl. After the female has laid her eggs, of which she will lay thousands and thousands and thousands, males fertilize them. So it's called broadcast spawning, where basically females drop their eggs in that bowl and males drop their reproductive material in that little bowl in the sediment. And then the males will actually guard them. Now, they don't take a long time to hatch. They usually only take a few days to hatch. And normally this spawning behavior is actually in the wintertime for us here in Ontario. So it's around January and February where they will start reproducing. Now, the babies, once they hatch, they usually stay hidden in plants or at the bottom of their environment until they can fend for themselves over here. Hopefully, some will start to notice this nice big piece of fish over here that they've seemed to miss. Over here, guys. Now, humans actually. Sorry, just pointed out to them.
Yeah. That'll do it.
Well, I've got them a little skittish every time I move. They seem to get a little skittish, but these guys know that it's there. There's also a couple pieces hiding way back there. You can see it. And there's a piece right in front of me. So I'm just going to keep it focused on that for a little bit. Yeah, they can pick their food clean pretty quickly. Sometimes we'll even put like a large piece of bonito in this tank, suspend it by the tail. I should actually mention, this is all dead frozen seafood. So we didn't put any live fish in the tank for them to eat. This is all dead. But if we'll put that large piece of bonito, they will pick it clean to the bone, and then we basically just pull out a fish skeleton at the end of it. So it's always a really cool to watch the piranhas feed. So lots of inhabitants of the Amazon River Basin, in terms of humans, will actually use their teeth for things, mainly tools. So they'll take out their teeth, and because they're razor sharp, they'll be used for shearing, anything like that in terms of making tools. One cool thing that I want to share is that people in the Amazon have also used their teeth to cut hair. So since we're all trapped at home right now, I think that's kind of funny because I'm dying for a haircut, but I think it's awesome that they're using these piranha teeth to cut their own hair, which is really unique. And sometimes they are actually eaten by humans. So humans do eat piranhas, which is another little known fact. Now, one other thing that I want to mention in terms of a piranha's relationship to humans is that they are common in aquariums, both larger establishments like Ripley's Aquarium Canada, but they're also common for home aquarium enthusiasts. So it's actually been reported that they've been introduced into several different areas, Canada included, by accident. And this is when a home aquarium enthusiast with the best intentions, maybe they move or they can't care for their animals anymore, so they end up releasing them. This causes a lot of problems. A lot of invasive species are introduced to environments that way. And piranhas have actually been found in some of the Great Lakes, as well as some lakes in British Columbia. So remember this in the future, guys. Don't ever release your animals into the wild. Make sure that if you need to give them up, you're giving them up to a caring place, because we don't want our piranhas in Canadian waters. However, because Canadian waters get so cold in the wintertime, they can't persist here. So even though they've been introduced and they've been found in Canadian waters in a few occasions, they can't actually survive our climate. So they do unfortunately die in the winter times when it gets really cold. So one other thing I want to mention is these, oh, they found this, is the other fish that you see in this tank. These ones right here that kind of look like large bumblebees. You may have been wondering what they are. They are called striped or banded leperinus. The big mouthful to say. This is another fish that you find in the Amazon. These ones right here. These guys are predominantly herbivorous. You might have noticed them taking a few bites out of the food, like this one right here. But their diet is, for the most part, herbivorous. So they feed on plants and leaves. One cool fact about them is that when they're young, they usually have 5 black bands. And then when they reach about a year, their bands will start to split, on kind of a cycle. So one of their black bands will split into two, and then about 6 months later, another one will split into two, and it is very cyclical. It usually happens every 6 months until they get the 10 bands that they have when they're an adult. Now, we've talked a little bit about the Amazon where these animals inhabit, and I want to tell you a little bit about Amazon conservation right now. So the Amazon River Basin is the largest river system in the world, and it supports the largest diversity of freshwater fish in the world as well. However, this area is being degraded very quickly, both the aquatic environment over there and the terrestrial environment in the Amazon, and they're under attack for a few different reasons. Terrestrial is mainly deforestation as well as poaching, but poaching also happens in the aquatic environment as well in the Amazon. So there's lots of illegal fishing operations and hunting operations, and the commercial fishing over there is also not very heavily regulated as of yet. Additionally, there is a lot of coastal development happening, and I mentioned this in a lot of my Explore by the Seat of Your Pants is that coastal development is detrimental to any aquatic ecosystem. The places that people want to inhabit that are nice coastal areas, by building those up, we're taking away very natural and pristine habitats from these animals, piranhas included. Now, you might also have noticed, those of you who have a keen eye, that we have a laundry basket floating around our exhibit. This is almost common here at the aquarium. A laundry basket is a very, very easy way to keep some of our animals separated. In this case, it's hard to see in here. This is our miracle baby. He was found by our husbandry team a couple of months ago. Now, our piranhas will reproduce in this tank, but usually other piranhas will go and eat the eggs. So it's actually kind of rare to have one develop to this extent. So we found him in our tank a little while ago and noticed he was much smaller, and we've never seen one this small before. So he is our little miracle baby. And right now we're keeping him separated because he's not as tough as the other larger ones in this tank. He's quite young, and we don't, as I mentioned before, they do develop a very strict hierarchy. So we don't want him to get picked on by the larger animals in this tank, the larger piranhas. So Jesse, do you have any questions for me?
People have been typing in all sorts of questions in the chat bar and Zoom here. Again, apologies to all our live groups. This has been one of the weirdest sessions in so many ways, but we really appreciate this. What a cool presentation, Caitlin. This was awesome. I used to work at the aquarium for several years, never got to see a piranha feed, so I can see why all the staff in the building want to come in and check this out. And so yeah, let's dive into questions, guys. I'm going to start with Dylan joining us in Hillsborough, North Carolina. Dylan, I know you've been typing in a few questions, man. So let's just, your mic is unmuted. If you have a question for us, come on up.
So one of my questions was, why do y'all just feed them dead fish? Why not feed them like live fish, like they do in the wild?
Fantastic. And we'll come back for a second one later. We'll have time for lots of questions, everyone, so it'll be perfect.
That's an awesome question. Thanks, bud. All of the animals here, the larger predator animals, are fed dead seafood for a couple reasons. It's really hard to get this type of live seafood here, being that we're in the center of downtown Toronto. That's basically one of the main reasons. Also, it allows us to monitor their nutrition a little bit better. So we're able to add vitamins into their dead seafood to bump up their nutritional value.
Awesome, very cool.
And then also, do you have black piranhas in there?
Black piranhas. Do you have black piranhas in there, like a special subspecies or anything? Yeah.
Good question. So we only have red-bellied piranhas in here. However, when I mentioned that they have the strongest bite force of any bony fish, that is specifically the black piranha species.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Caitlin. All right, let's head to Miss Letros to share a bunch of questions on behalf of her class. Miss Letros, you're demuted, so go for it whenever you're ready.
Okay, I have two questions. I know a lot of kids always think automatically that piranhas they have this really bad reputation, kind of like the shark from Jaws. Does anybody know where this was propagated, that piranhas are like flesh-eating monsters?
Yeah.
It tends to be a lot of movies that gives these sort of bad reputations. That's how sharks got their bad reputation, was mainly from a very certain famous Hollywood movie that I won't name. And piranhas, sorry?
We already did. Let's do it.
Well, oh, okay. Yeah, so Jaws kind of gave sharks that reputation. Piranhas have also been featured with that swarming behavior. And admittedly, it is one of the most interesting things to feature with these fish. It, you know, as you've watched, it is great looking on film, and it's one of those things that people like to see, but it's also one of the things that people only tend to see. And so that's where people constantly see the same imagery of these piranhas swarming different things, and that's not really how they behave 99% of the time in their environment. Most of their time is just spent swimming around in their shoals and doing their thing as fish, or hiding from potential predators. It's not swarming every single thing that moves in their environment. And they're also very skittish animals. As I was sitting here, the second I get closer to their tank, they swim immediately to the back. They want nothing to do with me. And on top of that, we get in this tank to clean it. We have divers go in this tank as well, and the piranhas are not interested in them at all. They're very skittish. They pretty much hide from them when they get in the tank.
Yeah, fantastic. It's my favorite thing about working at the aquarium. They're the biggest cowards of all the fish. They're the only ones that really like hide under a tree branch in the back. So cool question, Kelly. I'm trying to look up if there was like a specific movie that like prompted this. I can't seem to find that, although it's funny, if you look up piranha bad reputation, the first question that comes up is how fast can a piranha eat a human, which proves our point here. All right. Yeah. Let me go to Mr. Reed, joining us in Stony Creek. Mr. Reed, with you, your kids, if you have any questions for us, you're demuted. Go for it, man.
Well, we do. One of them was already asked, which was about living in Ontario and in the Great Lakes. The other is, one of the kids in my class, Mateo, wanted to know, why do piranhas attack, and how do they know when to?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a great question. Piranhas don't have very good eyesight, but they have other senses that...
Oh dear. Go for it.
So they can usually smell wounded fish or other animals in their environment before they can see them. And that's where that hierarchy comes into play, where the more dominant fish will swim in, take a little nibble of whatever that organism was, and then swim away. So that's sort of what instigated this reputation of them being bloodthirsty predators. But again, that's such a small percentage of how they spend their time.
Fantastic. Great questions, guys. All right, I'm going to go to Natalie in a presumably Miss Camarina's class. Natalie, if you have a question for us, let me just demute your mic and you're good to go.
Do piranhas only attack if you bother them?
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, that's an awesome question. Yes, they do. We have to be very respectful of animals in their natural habitat. Remember that we are guests when we're swimming around in their environments. They don't want to hurt us. In fact, we're so much bigger than piranhas that they're afraid of us. Like I mentioned with our divers getting in this tank, the piranhas want nothing to do with them. They, as Jesse said, will hide in sort of the back of their tank in the little crevices. Oftentimes when it's labeled as someone being attacked by a piranha, it's, as I mentioned, when they went in to investigate and they had a little nibble of a finger or a toe. That's pretty much it.
This is true. We've covered this in shark presentations too, is that a lot of animal attack, so to speak, are just animal curiosity. If we're curious about something as humans, we pick it up, we ask it questions. Sharks can't do that, piranhas can't do that, so they take a bite because that's the way that they interact with the world. So that's a lot of things, and if you respect animals, you don't run the risk of having those sort of things happen. So great answer, guys. Miss Camarina, you actually had a cool question written in the chat bar, so I'm going to come to you directly, and then I'll keep going with students. But if you want, just demute your mic, and you can share the one about the reverse of all this, piranhas attacking people. Perfect.
Okay, so yes, you mentioned that piranhas are eaten by people, which I did not know. And I was just wondering, what are the popular locations as to where piranhas are eaten by people?
Awesome question. That was news to me also, that people ate piranhas. Mainly it is in their native areas of the Amazon River Basin. That's where they're found. So it's the people that live around that area who will mainly consume them or use them for tools, as I also mentioned.
Very cool. I think, and when you're done, when you can travel again, Miss Camarena, you can go to those places and get some delicious piranha if you're so inclined. Just a thought. But it has to be actually, we'll make that message. We haven't covered that yet, Caitlin. So for people tuning in, both on piranha and just in general with your programs, you guys often highlight a really cool program for sustainable seafood. Could you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I also want to mention, I don't know how piranha tastes, so it could be delicious, it could be terrible. Ripley's Aquarium of Canada is partners with an organization called Oceanwise. They were established out of the Vancouver Aquarium, actually. And Oceanwise basically goes through different restaurants and different species of fish and will identify those species and those manufacturers or commercial fishing operations that are the most sustainable. And what that means is if it's a sustainable operation, it's not harming the ocean and the inhabitants of the ocean, and it's not causing a decline in the species fishing numbers, in the population numbers. So basically they will outline which species are the best to consume and the ones that are the most sustainable. You can check them out on their website, but they also have really handy pocket guides that will list the best species, the ones that are caught the most sustainably. And they have one that also is strictly for Ontario residents if you are here in Ontario with me.
Fantastic. Great answer. I also love that we're getting a chance to see this like mainly herbivorous fish, you know, opportunistically feeding. No, it's really cool. It's not something that we get to see very often. Now he's bullied by the piranhas, of course. But that's awesome. It's really cool. All right, I'm gonna do, we're gonna do a whole other round of questions in a minute. I'm gonna go to our student known only as Galaxy Tab A on my Zoom chat bar. So if you wanna demute, man, go for it and we'll take a question from you. Let me just pull up your video and yeah, just unmute your mic and you should be good for a question, okay? Perfect. And if not, we'll come back in a minute and you can type it in.
When did they discover the piranhas?
Ooh, when did they discovering piranhas?
Like piranhas as a species?
Is that so what you mean? The idea, yeah. Long time ago.
Yeah.
Back to muted again, so I think so.
I don't have a date for you, actually. I wish I could answer that question, but I don't have an exact date of when they discovered the first piranha species. However, I will say, I mentioned earlier that the number of species is somewhere between 30 to 60, and that's only today's current highly contested number. There could be more species that haven't been discovered yet because we do know more about outer space than we do in some of the aquatic environments in the world. So that number is kind of always changing and always evolving, especially when scientists are able to pull out genetic data. We're better able to see where species fit in terms of their relationship to other species.
Yeah, I'll just mention too, I mean, humans populated the basin with the Amazon and with the places where piranhas would be, you know, 10, 11,000 years ago. So since it's a fairly ubiquitous fish, you know, the moment people got there, they would discover something like that that plays a fairly big role in the ecosystem. So cool question, man. Kelly, I'm trying to find that answer to your question that you typed in online, so I'll try and track that down because it's not something that would sort of be readily, easily defined, so I'll find that for you if I can. Right now, I'm going to go to Mr. Nickel. If you have a question for us here in Etobicoke, just unmute your mic and come on up, man. If you're still, there we go. Hey, Mr. Nickel, go for it.
Hi there. Actually, all my questions have sort of been answered. All the
ones
that
Perfect. See, Caitlin's just too good at her job.
Yeah, she covered a lot.
Fantastic. Well, if you think of anything else, by all means, type it in the chat bar. Let me know, and I'll come to you for another live question.
Thank you.
For the time being, I'll go back to Dylan because I know you have a question, man. So Dylan, come on back up. Just demute your mic, and we'll go from there.
So I know earlier that you said that the piranhas, the female piranhas lay their eggs in a little hole, like a bowl, and then the males go and fertilize it. How does the fertilizer get into the eggs, or does it just stay around it and that's enough?
Yeah.
Ooh, right on. Okay, I think I saw you type that question as well. I wasn't sure what you were talking about. Thank you. So Broadcast spawning is a reproductive strategy that a lot of fish do. And it's basically, the best way I can describe it is like a petri dish where females will just drop their unfertilized eggs into a bowl or that bowl or the environment or whatever. And males will then swim over top and then release their sperm. And that's basically, the sperm will then just fall into the eggs and fertilize the eggs that way. It's a common reproductive strategy for, as I mentioned, a lot of fish. It allows them to produce a lot of eggs. So generally broadcast spawners will produce hundreds of thousands of eggs, sometimes even millions of eggs. But generally only a handful of those eggs will actually survive and develop into a mature adult.
I'd encourage you, Dylan, and anyone else watching too, for that matter, Blue Planet and Blue Planet 2, BBC series, just the most comprehensive, amazing ocean series ever put to film. And you'll see broadcast spawning in all sorts of different fish groups around the oceans. They're really, really cool, and you see it in just a sort of magnificent, fantastically filmed way. To Ms. Letros' question, so her question typed in online was, how far back do piranhas go in evolution? So I just checked that out for us. So 25 million years ago, we find their ancestors, and about 9 million years ago, we start getting in the fossil record sort of distinctive piranhas, where we can tell that this is something that is a piranha, has that sort of dentition or teeth. So very cool. All right, let me go to Mr. Reed. If you have another question for us, come on up.
Okay. Actually, my son had a question. Do you want to ask your question, Noah? No, he doesn't. Yeah, he's a little shy. But he wanted to know why the striped fish, why the red-bellied piranha weren't trying to eat any of them.
Yeah.
That's an awesome question. Also, a couple times while I've been sitting here, you might have missed the striped fish take a bite out of this fish and then just spit it back out. So they haven't actually been eating it all. We get that question a lot regarding our shark tank, why the sharks don't eat the other fish in the tank. And the answer is pretty much the same. We feed these animals 3 times a week, the piranhas and the sharks actually. And as you can tell, we feed them really good quality food. It's all very nutritious. It's provided to them. It's basically like us serving them a 5-star restaurant dinner. We also will fillet it for them in some cases, and we'll take out the pieces that their digestive system can't process as easily. So we give them a really good buffet, and they basically just are fed enough that they don't need to hunt in this tank. It's hard to hunt animals. It's hard to hunt other inhabitants of the tank. They're very good at hiding, the striped leporhinus as well. And they also just won't waste the energy chasing another fish in the tank when we will give them food the very next day.
Yeah. I always love the analogy that, you know, if we had to, we would chase down animals and eat them too, but we can go to a grocery store and get it all there. At least most of us can do that on a fairly readily basis. So just like the fish in these tanks, it's not something where you need to expend the energy hunting. Might as well eat the buffet laid out before you. Also, we haven't talked about this baby in the container at the top yet. It's very cool. I'm really glad we got a chance to showcase that. If anyone's keen to, in some of our shark presentations, we've seen baby sharks and baby shark eggs, which are just wicked. So I encourage you to check that out. All right, we're going to take 2 more questions before we wrap up here. So I'm going to go back to Natalie in Ms. Camarana's class. Just unmute your mic, Natalie, and you'll be good to go.
So if the piranhas are full, then the other fishes.
Could you repeat that, Natalie? Sorry.
If the piranhas are full like sharks,
Yeah.
they don't eat other people or fish.
Yep. So, Caitlin, if you want to answer that, if the piranhas are full, they don't want to eat other fish, yes?
Oh, okay. Thank you, Jesse.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, think about it in terms of yourself. If you eat an entire pizza to yourself, first off, awesome job. But after you're full, looking at, let's say, another whole pizza that you have to eat is kind of the worst feeling ever. You go into that food coma where you just don't want to move, you don't want to eat anything. That's basically our piranhas. After they eat the 2 to 3 grams of their body weight, they're not hungry, they're really full, and then they just sit and basically rest.
Yeah. Speak for yourself on not eating 2 whole pizzas, by the way, but good point. Let's go. 2 more questions, guys. I'm going to go to Galaxy Tab, which I'm just thinking of as your name now. But first, I want to go to Miss Letros, because you had a really good question in the chat bar. So, Miss Letros, you're demuted. Go for it.
So I know that a lot of animals in the animal kingdom, fish included, have like a mutual relationship with each other where they benefit off of one another. Some spiders keep frogs as pets and the frogs help them. And do piranhas have a mutual or have any mutual relationships with any other type of fish or aquatic species?
Yeah, very cool.
Ooh, that's an awesome question. There are lots of animals here, as you mentioned, that have those kind of symbiotic relationships. They might be mutually beneficial, but there's also a few other types of relationships that species will have with each other. As far as I know, piranhas don't have a relationship like that with any other fish in their environment. They mainly just stay together in their shoal and essentially work as a team that way.
Nice. All right, Galaxy Tab man. Oh, you had your mic demuted, then you muted it again. Come on back up. There you go.
This other question that I have is, do piranhas like freshwater or saltwater?
Oh, do piranhas live in freshwater or saltwater? Caitlin, good question.
Great question. Piranhas live in freshwater. They live in the freshwater environments in the Amazon River basin. But like I've also mentioned that they have been found in some other freshwater environments in North America where they've likely been introduced from a home aquarium enthusiast. So exclusively freshwater species, bud.
Yep, very cool. I lied on the last question, but we just got another one typed in from one of the kids in Miss Camarina's class. By the way, great questions for everyone. I'm so thrilled that all of you have such awesome questions and are so keen to ask questions. That's amazing. Doesn't happen very often, so way to go. Are piranhas hard to find, Caitlin? Not the ones in front of you. They're easy to find. We see them.
I was gonna say, yeah, they're right here. They're not hard at all. As far as I know, I don't think so. I have not had the fortunate experience to go to the Amazon myself and actually know if they're hard to find or not. I think they're pretty readily available. They're not listed as being vulnerable or anything with the IUCN, so that means their populations are stable enough in their environments.
Yep. We've had a bunch of people on that have explored the rivers of Brazil and the Amazon in general, and the general consensus is that if you go and you talk to local villagers and say, where can I find piranha, they'll take you right to piranha. So it's not it's hard to check out. And then one last question before we wrap up, and I really appreciate all this and all you guys sticking around. So Miss Camarena wanted to ask, when will the baby piranha be released to the rest of the group, Caitlin?
I don't have an answer for that question. It's kind of the miracle baby here at the aquarium. It's so rare to even have these animals have a young that will get that big. As far as I know, I have no answer as to when it will be released. We definitely have to wait for it to get a little bit bigger because as you saw, it's kind of about a third of the size of these larger ones. So we want to wait till it gets to be at least the same size. And then we may not even keep it here because these animals have already established their hierarchy. It might get sent to one of our other aquariums when it's bigger and stronger because they won't identify it as a juvenile. It'll just be a whole new piranha in that exhibit.
Yeah, very cool. I'm glad we got that message in as well. Before we wrap up, Caitlin, where can people go to learn more about all the cool stuff the aquarium is doing online while you guys are closed to the public?
Thank you, Jesse. You can definitely check out our Ripley's Aquarium homepage. We also have an at-home section that'll give you all of the updates as to what we're doing. We are doing a whole whack of content next week, some of it with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants for World Oceans Day, which is on Monday. We're turning it into World Oceans Week, so we're going to be doing something every single day next week to celebrate our oceans and our aquatic environments.
Fantastic. Well, we're certainly looking really forward to that, Caitlin. I can't wait. Yes, World Oceans Week next week, starting on June 8th. We're going to be doing like 25 programs over the course of the week. So if you're keen on oceans, you want to learn more about the aquatic habitats around the world, do check us out. We'd love to have you guys joining us. For everyone here, I know it's sort of a weird session. We will get this up on YouTube soon. So for the teachers that want to share this with their students, you can. But for now, what we're going to do, what we do at the end of every broadcast is I'm going to demute everyone's microphones. And so boys and girls, teachers and families, if you guys could get ready to join me in saying a huge thank you to Caitlin, some of it, of course, not letting me demute people now, but join me. Thank you guys so much. Here we go.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you, Caitlin.
You guys are
Thanks.
awesome.
That was great.
That's
Thanks so
great.
much.
Thank you.
You're
Caitlin,
welcome, guys. Thank you.
thank you so much, Caitlin. That was awesome. Appreciate all the patience with all the tech stuff, guys. And we'll see you all soon for some more great stuff with Ripley's. For now, have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye, guys.
You